Good morning, everybody. My name is Will Schmear, and welcome back to another episode of the Lovable Survivor podcast. Today is episode 25 of the podcast, and I am back after a week off. Before we get into too many things about this week's show, which is all about hobbies and the magic or the role they play in stroke recovery. So we're going to talk a lot about hobbies today. But before we do, I want to hop into, there was no episode last week. I am in the process of uploading all the videos that were not filmed, but just the audio video sort of things to YouTube. And then I did record the last couple episodes with Riverside to do video and audio. I have not still, I put some clips on social you might have seen, but I've not done the full videos yet. And those are coming out soon. I guess I'm trying to get a little bit ahead. I don't really know what's holding me up, except for same reason I did not record an episode last week. I, again, have been recording a little bit more in bulk. I'm trying to get into a process where I always have like 2 or 3 in the tank. We're kind of there, not fully there. Anyways, last week, as a stroke survivor living with MS, I had a little bit of a hiccup, as I like to call it. It wound up being nothing crazy or super severe or alarming or nothing that it just was a thing. I wasn't feeling well last Thursday night. Tried to get through it. My wife and kids were out of town. My daughter was home, thankfully. She and I agreed, let's just take a trip over to the local hospital because it was pretty late. Get checked out. After some tests, after some scans, nothing appeared to be wrong. So I don't know if I missed some medication or, kind of the life of being a stroke survivor and somebody living with MS is sometimes you just have these things that unfortunately happen for one reason or another. Again, I don't think I missed any medication. I wasn't really crushing myself. There was no heavy, honestly, I was excited. Like, kids are back to school this week. They're not in school yet, but they will be this week, which as a parent, again, is exciting for me. But yeah, everything seems to be going well. And, I do a lot of work on myself. I talked about it endlessly. Mental, physical work, a lot of running, a lot of eating healthy, trying to do all the right things. And still sometimes things just, your brain, depending on what you have, you might just have a misfire. You might just have a little hiccup. I wish I knew what it was so that I could proactively prevent it, because I thought it might be a little bit of a seizure. I've had that before I went on medication back in 2020 for that. I don't have epilepsy, thankfully, so I'm still able to drive. I haven't really had any episodes to speak of. Nothing showed up in the scans. So good news is nothing serious, feeling better. It did take me a day or two to kind of recollect myself, but I'm feeling better and, back to running, back to working out. I guess the reason I share this is because I think as brain injury survivors, we all kind of go through this. We have, hopefully little hiccups here and there. Hopefully things are preventable. Hopefully, like this, it winds up being nothing. I'm glad it was nothing. But yeah, it doesn't take away from the frustration because, again, if there was something I did, I'd like to not do it again, but that's just me. You may have a different take on it. Anyways, feeling better and really excited for this week's episode because I was really excited for it last week when I was going to record. But again, the magic of hobbies in stroke recovery, kind of rekindling. Maybe you had hobbies prior to your stroke. I know I did. I had a lot of things that I was looking forward to. Again, maybe I'm different than you. I was in my later 30s at the time of my stroke. We had just moved to Florida to a new home here in the Jacksonville area. I was really, really excited. And honestly, I still am 4 years into this house because I know that I'm getting better. despite last Thursday's little thing. I'm getting better. I have the house I want, the space that I want. My wife gets annoyed because I take it over, but because I have so many hobbies, but I think that is maybe unique to me. But here's the thing with hobbies, and we'll jump into a lot of things, but I think hobbies are super important when it comes, especially for brain injury survivors, because they are things that we don't necessarily have to build into a business, although I often do. I get a little excited. I get a little ahead of myself. But the cool thing about hobbies is they challenge us mentally, sometimes physically, whether it's running, whether it's woodworking, whether it's needlepoint. I mean, these are some of these things I'm not into, but like they just keep our brains moving and excited. And it's just a different thing. It's nothing for work. It's nothing we have to do. There are things we can dive into and explore. If we really love it, we can keep diving in and keep exploring. If we wind up not loving it, hopefully you are better than me at this. You don't spend too much money and too much time on the hobby if it's going to go by the wayside. But I think, again, with hobbies, they come and they go. And I'll just share an example. Honestly, in the last couple of weeks, I've gotten back into, of all things, at 40 years old, as a stroke survivor living with MS, I am getting back into DJing. And now that sounds crazy if you don't know the backstory and the context, but when I went to college at Miami 20 years ago or 18 years ago, my second year, so yeah, like 17 years ago, I got into EDM and electronic music because I was going to school in Miami. It was just kind of, you were hearing it all the time. You hear a lot of hip hop and a lot of reggaeton, but like electronic music is definitely big in Miami. And, I just kind of fell into it because I enjoyed going to clubs. It's not for everybody. Everybody's got a different take on it, but I love the culture of electronic music and all the things it represents. But anyways, it became a big part of my life. I kind of went from hip hop in the New York, New Jersey area in high school to college. I got more into the EDM and electronic scene. And again, it's big in Miami and it's big in the clubs and it's just part of the culture down there. It's a lot of fun. I love it. I had some friends that were starting to DJ. This was early 2000s, so it was still a lot of vinyl, which is what I started on back in the day. I never really got too far with it. It was really just a light hobby. Playing for friends, playing at house parties, playing in my own house in college with my friends. Before we go out, I would do some DJing at the house before we went out to the clubs. Just kind of like a fun hobby. Anyways, I put it to the side. I've been listening to it now for the last 20 years. My kids, it drives them crazy. My friends from Jersey, all my friends in my entire life, they don't really understand it unless they're a friend from Miami. And even those friends don't always like it that much. But it's been pretty consistent for me since 2000, definitely since Sirius satellite radio came out and Howard went over there in 2006. So I'd listen to Howard do his radio show. When that wasn't on, I was listening to the electronic music channels because they have great channels. They still do. BPM, Channel 51 on Sirius XM. Shout out to them. They're great. All the hosts and DJs are great. It's just really something I loved. And when I went over to Europe in college, even in high school, like electronic music is much bigger in Europe. So there's always been this connection. So anyways, I got back into it. Literally 2 weeks ago, I decided to take a Udemy class, which for anybody out there who's taken courses or hobby courses or signed up for something on Udemy, I so rarely finish a course. I've just been a collector of courses on Udemy for the last 10 years. But I took a couple DJ classes 2 weeks ago and I blew through them. I mean, I was excited. I bought a whole DJ set. I started downloading stuff because, again, when I was into this back in college, it was all vinyl. It was, CDJs and all the things that you don't care about that I'm talking about right now are kind of new to me because they weren't as big or as popular or as affordable back then. And so this is a really fun hobby. And the thing I like about DJing is it seems random. I get it. But I've been listening to music at the gym off and on for years. I've always listened to this music, so I know it pretty well. I know early 2000s, I know late 90s, early 2000s, 2010. Even have friends that DJ'd down in Miami. And so I've really been around it. And I don't know, I just have it's weird when you get to a point in your life where like a hobby you really understand, like, oh my God, this has been like 20 years in the making of this hobby. Anyways, long story short, I'm getting into DJing. That's been kind of fun. I don't know where it's going to go, but right now it's just fun learning, getting into it. Just there's a lot to it. It's honestly, I have a good base. So I don't know what comes of it, but it is really, it's been fun. It's been impactful in 2 short weeks. And I think it's just one of these things that gets your brain working mentally and physically. You got to do a lot of things when you're DJing. Now for context, again, I'm going way off about DJing, but I also I was a really big woodworker prior to my stroke in 2020 or 2019. And in fact, the reason I bought this house really was to really build out a YouTube studio / woodworking shop in our garage, which I sort of did. And I may still really do. However, with being a stroke survivor with MS, I've really been slow to get back into woodworking because cutting off my fingers is not something I'm interested in. I want to make sure I'm doing it safely. It is already a dangerous hobby. Prior to having a stroke, when you have all the physical capabilities in the world, you still have to be careful. I love that building. And I think that's what hobbies kind of represent to me. It's building, whether it's a side gig, it's something like DJing. It's like you're building like an atmosphere, you're building an environment, you're building a feeling for people. And so, and all these things, they involve lots of different things. And like with woodworking in particular, it's a lot of measuring, it's a lot of cutting, it's a lot of precision, it's a lot of, again, mental hurdles, mental exercise. But it's fun. You don't think of it as that. I think the same thing is true with any needle work, like needlepoint, knitting. I know a lot of people are into that. Puzzles. Maybe you're into Cricut, the vinyl printer, doing those things, crafting. I got puzzles, books. I mean, it spans so many things. And they're always like, the cool thing about hobbies is there's no pressure. You don't have to turn it into a job. You don't have to turn it into a business. You could just have fun. And I think sometimes in life, maybe this is me, but you hear people get so hyper focused on things that they forget to explore other things in life. They get so busy with kids that don't even know how to pick up a hobby. Like I have the exact opposite problem. I have so many hobbies. I don't know how to stop having hobbies, which is, to be fair, its own problem. And you may experience this as well as a survivor. And again, the reason I'm so kind of passionate about this is because I have so many hobbies. I love learning. Ironically, because I never loved it in school, but now I absolutely love learning. I love gaining knowledge. Sometimes it's for something I want to learn specifically, like DJing. I want to get back into that. So I'm really on that right now. But then like reading books, you hear a lot of people talk about books. Like I just love reading just for the information. Sometimes I want it because I want to turn it into something. So then that's where reading, you got to read a little, practice a little, read a little, practice a little. And I think that's just dependent on your goals If you enjoy reading for fun, like myself, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, do it. Don't let other people talk you out of it. There's nothing wrong with reading. Can't hurt yourself by reading. The only thing is if you do want to kind of go on into the next phase, you do eventually have to stop reading and start practicing the thing. But nothing wrong with certainly a hobby. You can read a bunch and then practice. That's a whole other thing. Anyways, I think when it comes to hobbies and its impact on stroke, there's a lot of benefits. There's just therapeutic benefits. There's you're using your brain, you're thinking, you're not forcing things so much. For me, it's taught me some patience that I never had, because prior to my stroke, and I still struggle with this, but prior to my stroke, I went 100 miles an hour. I still kind of do that, but the stroke has forced me to slow down. So I'm a little bit now I'm finally getting to the place where okay, I want to learn everything in 10 minutes. I want to know everything last week. But the reality is it takes time. It takes, there's sort of, for me, there's like a cadence to it. Yeah. I mean, really, it is as simple as just slowing down. With woodworking, I've had to sort of go back to the beginning and rebuild confidence that I definitely had prior to my stroke, because I was getting to kind of, I would say, mid to advanced. I would definitely not say I'm the best woodworker on the planet, but I was definitely taking that next jump to the next level. And so you might have experienced this yourself as a stroke survivor or any brain injury. Really, you do tend to take a step back. But again, with hobbies, you can kind of, it feels like less forced learning. It's just more fun. It's a good way to keep your mind sharp without feeling like I got to do brain exercises. Like nothing sounds less fun than the word brain exercise. So yeah, hobbies are a great way to just have fun, and rebuild confidence. Again, emotional healing, building that resilience, just re-engaging with things that you used to love, because there's no reason that just because you're a stroke survivor and you've had a stroke and you're doing the work and you're starting to see some of those benefits. Hobbies are a great way to just find new common friends, whether they're survivors or not, just kind of getting back out there, socializing, whether that's in person or online, depends on your preference, how you're feeling about things. But there's so many communities online. And one of the great things, again, about the pandemic, I feel like I always talk about that, but I think it has to do with the timing of the world, the timing of my stroke, certainly. Now the availability to things, not everything has to be in person. So you can find a lot of groups, whether that's through hobbies, through just again, the great thing about hobbies is you don't have to be super serious. There's usually groups for every level, and you can kind of pick and choose as you want with a hobby to either go up and in advance to a certain level, or just if you just enjoy a hobby and you just want to be okay at it, that's okay too. I think sometimes we get so hyper focused on trying to be the best at everything. And again, this might be me and my age, but obviously it depends on what your overall goal is with the hobby. Do you just want to be able to, with woodworking, for example, do you just want to be able to make a box? Sure. Then you probably just need a beginner course or some early videos. But again, I love hobbies because they keep the mind sharp, to get different ways of thinking and working out the mind without necessarily focusing on working out your mind and your brain. So I think there are so many great benefits that we often don't think about with hobbies. And I guess one of the things that brought this up to me recently is because I always hear this from other adults, and I don't know if it's millennials or people that I know in particular. It's so strange to me because I have such a passion for so many things. I'm very guilty, honestly, of getting too sidetracked. I get into too many things, I think, which I don't really mind because I want to be good at a lot of things. And that's just how I'm built. I'm okay with that. Again, if DJing goes nowhere, fine. But I just want to explore it because I've always been into this. And it's I was talking to my daughter this morning. I can't think of too many things. Okay, probably woodworking, sports, EDM or dance music, whatever you really want to call it these days, because it kind of interchanges. But I don't have a lot of things that I've been into for 20 plus years. And so it just occurred to me, like, I guess design would be probably the fourth thing. But like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with that exactly. I just, I want to be able to share that hobbies come and go. Again, this is not specific to stroke survivors. I just think that the benefits of having hobbies or exploring new hobbies and new topics that might be of interest. Because the other thing about being a stroke survivor, I think we all know this, is the brain works in mysterious ways. We don't, as much as we know about the brain and as far as science has come, we still don't know a ton of things. And I've never specifically met somebody who's had this, but I have certainly talked to enough doctors and medical professional staff to know that as a stroke survivor, you probably heard similar stories where like somebody who is not, for example, from the UK, who's had a stroke, I don't know, maybe with a Canadian or from the US, and they've had a stroke and somehow, some way, rare, this is not common, but I've heard people have literally been able to pick up new languages super quick as a result of their stroke. Like, I think some people have woken up with new accents. Like, it's crazy. I mean, so why couldn't you maybe have had an inkling you were into something one time prior to your stroke, had a stroke, and all of a sudden you start doing it and you practice it and you find, one, you really love it. Two, suddenly you're amazing at it. Like, there are no drawbacks in my mind. Kind of like nasal breathing. Like once you figure it out, you're like, oh, where has this been my whole life? That was specific to me, but I really do believe nasal breathing is pretty advantageous once you realize and once you practice nasal breathing and better breathing practices and do some breath work. Like, it's like, wow, where was that? I thought that was a bunch of hocus pocus bullshit. And it winds up being, for me, it was an amazing transformation going from being a cigarette smoker to a nasal breather at age 39. That immediately, like within months of starting nasal breathing, I started running and I've been running ever since. So, these are just things that I'm bringing out to your attention because I think hobbies are, there's so many benefits. I can't even list all the benefits in this episode. However, there is sometimes, I know for me, with hobbies, there are some struggles, and woodworking was something I was super big into. I couldn't wait to move into this house in 2019, build out the shop, do all these things. Now I'm slowly, very slowly getting back into it, starting with some really small, simple projects, nothing advanced, no major cutting, no major sawing. Like, I've got all the tools kind of in place. I haven't really designed my shop the way I want, but I'm starting small. And so I've had to overcome that obstacle and like kind of overcome some of the hurdles of like getting back into it because I wanted to right away. I was frustrated that I lacked the dexterity sometimes and the confidence and just couldn't do a lot of the things that I obviously could do prior to my stroke with woodworking. So that has been a bit of an issue. And I think it doesn't matter if you're into woodworking or anything, whatever the hobbies you might have been into and excelled at prior. And we know this because I've talked about this too, like typing, not really, it's not a hobby, but it's just, there are things that are frustrating, especially if you're somebody who remembers how everything was right up until the day of your stroke, depending on your stroke and the deficits you might have experienced at the end of your stroke, it just takes time to rebuild the confidence and overcome the obstacles because you can't do things as fast, or I certainly can't do all the things I want to do as quickly. Some I can't even do it at all still. Although I think yeah, I mean, there's definitely things I still can't necessarily do. Yeah, like tying my shoes. I'll give you that one. I think I said this a couple episodes, but 3.5 years into my stroke, I can actually tie my shoes now, but it is still very clumsy, very awkward. I've been running for a year, but honestly, just this summer have I really gotten to the level that like still not as fast as I want to be, and I don't want to be fast for the sake of being fast. I want to be fast just have my workouts specifically when I'm running take a little bit less time. I would like to be probably in the I'd like the average pace to be 11 minute miles, I guess. Like, honestly, I'd love them to be like 9, 10, but not quite there, but pretty close. So I am still working on that. And again, there's nothing wrong with any of these things with the hobbies. I think it's just part of what we go through as survivors is that we understand the benefits of, either re-engaging in hobbies, picking new hobbies, just trying new things. I think that's a big thing about being a survivor is just like being open. I know for one, things I was closed off to prior to my stroke, I've really tried to make an effort to be open to more things. And I think picking up hobbies, again, they don't have to be lifelong hobbies. They could just be like, I'm kind of interested in this thing. I'm going to learn about it. And then you spend a week, 2 weeks, a month, depending on your level of engagement from the get-go. You could always pick it down. You could pick it back up later. It's just all this, I guess the one thing I would say is give it enough time. See if it's something you really want to explore more. For me, like woodworking, I know I loved it before. I know it's a little harder now. So it's like I pick it up every now and then, see where I'm at. I feel good. Like right now, I'm building a little box, not a very hard project. I know it's not very little either. It's actually a big box, but but I'm not like me 4 years ago. I would have tried to build it in a weekend. Now I'm like, I'll do some cuts this week. I'll put it down. I'll revisit it over the weekend. It doesn't have to be built in 5 minutes. And in fact, I don't want it to be because I don't want to get frustrated. I just want to be able to build it, do it nicely. So I think that that's a lot of slow down, take your time, things I should have done prior to my stroke. The things I'm sort of realizing now, I want to do it. It's important to me. It's something I want to build, but it doesn't have to be done. There's nobody paying me for it. It's just something I want to do for me. And I'm staying on top of it, but I'm not necessarily doing it every 5 minutes, or I'm not doing, I guess doing a little bit on it each day would be nice, but I'm not putting pressure on myself. I just want to have fun. It's on the table in the shop. I'm not doing 40 other projects right now. So I have the space to kind of build, do some cuts, make some work, do a glue up, put it down, revisit it in a few days. So I do think it is hobbies are a good way to rebuild confidence, rebuild, emotional connection to things that you used to love, and just rebuilding confidence in general. And again, I think the other thing that's big is, I've talked a lot about building out a community of stroke survivors, and that has gone a little slower than anticipated. I actually am meeting with my stroke survivor group here locally next week. So I'm curious to talk to some of them because I kind of see how I want to move forward with that. Because I put a lot of thought into it over the summer, things have been. It's been a weird summer. I think I've said that the last couple episodes. I've stayed pretty on track here. Obviously, last week was a hiccup. I think I missed one episode in June, probably, but we're on episode 25, and I really have been doing it pretty consistently on a weekly basis, this podcast, since January. And I didn't start at the beginning of the year. So, I think I'm 25 for 28 weeks, give or take. So I feel good about that. And as a survivor, I don't know about you, but I feel you always hear this consistency. And I think that is important. But also as a stroke survivor, especially having MS, I just think we should give ourselves some grace as survivors, whether you're a survivor building a business, just, building awareness, building a community, whatever you're into as a survivor. I think we have to give ourselves grace. And I know other people mean well, but I'll say this again. I say this all the time. I don't know how many times I said it here, but I love doctors, nurses, medical professionals. I mean, last Thursday night when I was at the hospital, I hadn't been to the hospital in a while, like a long time. I haven't even been to a doctor's office in a couple months because I've slowed down on my appointments, thankfully. And I just forgot how much I enjoy kind of being in the hospital. It sounds weird. You don't want to be there, but when you're there or I'm there, these people are helping save lives. They're helping, they're sacrificing time with their family to save other people's lives, to help other people get well. In my case, I didn't know what was going on and we were trying to figure it out. And I was sitting there in the hospital the whole time, just trying to entertain the staff and the different medical professionals that were in and out seeing me. I will say doctors are a little harder to entertain than the nursing staff and the CNAs and things like that. But yeah, I don't know. I'm so appreciative of the people that work in the ER and, the hospital down here that I go to sometimes. And to be fair, I go there sometimes because I'm there for other things because I have some appointments through that network and through that hospital. So I'll be going off there off and on since my stroke in 2019. So we're on 3 years now, 3.5 years. Anyways, yeah, so many great people. So I shout out to the medical staff there in the Baptist network here in Jacksonville, Florida. So many great people. Always wonderful staff, always down to make jokes. Yeah, could not be more thankful for them. And like I said, I'm really glad it was kind of nothing at this point. We all agree it's, we shall see. I'm getting some more tests done in a couple weeks for my annual MS checkup. So hopefully there's nothing, but yeah, really excited. Not so excited to go to Baptist, really, but it was good to. Silver lining of going to the hospital is it was good to kind of see some old friends at the facility. Would have rather seen them under different circumstances, but never a dull moment at a Baptist facility, and they're always great. So, anyways, hobbies. I don't know if you're into it, check it out. Whether it's reading, needlepoint, knitting. God, so many hobbies. I can't, my head's going to explode about how many hobbies I'm thinking of right now. But I am 0 to 100 right now on DJing. We'll see how that goes next episode. Well, maybe we'll do a check-in next week when I do the next episode. But again, there are so many great hobbies, so many great things to explore. I highly recommend you check it out if you are somebody who is a survivor and, maybe you're no longer working or you're just older or, hobbies are just a great way to keep the mind sharp, to have fun, keeping the mind sharp. Yeah. Just keeping the mind active in a positive impact. When you think about keeping the mind active, especially after a brain injury or a stroke or anything like that. So some fun things to recommend this week. I'm still reading Titan because it is apparently the longest book I've chosen to read this year. Still enjoying it. About 3/4 of the way through. I don't know. I'm into it. I don't know why. Rockefeller is, I don't know, they got a bad rap. I find it fascinating. I find his story fascinating. Who knows what it, it's kind of like facts we hear from doctors or different survivor facts you hear, like 1 in 10 people, blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't know. I wasn't around the 1800s. The way it's written is really good. Great read. Just kind of interesting. I love biographies. That one's definitely great. Podcast recommendations. Good for You with Whitney Cummings. She is fantastic on top of DJing this summer. I've been really, really getting back into comedy. In fact, I'm trying to get my daughter to take a improv class with me here in Florida this summer or this fall because she is taking classes at home this semester just to kind of do some different things. And, anyway, so she's going to be kind of at home this fall. And, I'm trying to get her to explore different things, and she's been into exploring hobbies. I think that's kind of why I got back into some hobbies, because she was talking about getting back into soccer, because she hasn't played soccer since 2018. And yeah, so she's into soccer. That has nothing to do with Whitney Cummings' podcast, but I'm back into comedy, and she's got a great podcast. Whitney is a fantastic, amazing comedian. Bertcast is always good. Tom Segura, Two Bears, One Cave with Bert and Tom. And another new one is Tom Papa. I've been catching up on some of his episodes. Really like that. South Florida's still weird. Jim Gaffigan's still amazing. DJing is the new thing I recommend. And to everybody out there listening this week, do yourself a favor. Pick a new hobby. Explore it. See where it goes. If it goes nowhere, okay, pick another one. I don't know. That's my recommendation this week. Anyways, hope you found this episode valuable. I hope you are enjoying the podcast. And if you are, please check us out on YouTube. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Check us out on all your favorite podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify. Good Pods is my new favorite this year. Highly recommend it. I know there's a ton of other great podcast platforms. And I think that's it for episode 25 of the podcast. So, bye for now.